Hello everyone, I am Ranjan Das. In this course of lectures, we are going to learn the principles of electron paramagnetic resonance and some of its applications. Electron paramagnetic resonance. I am sure most of you have heard another spectroscopic technique called nuclear magnetic resonance. This is abbreviated as NMR, and this electron paramagnetic resonance is abbreviated as EPR. There are a lot of similarities in these two techniques. Here in NMR, the key requirement is that the certain nuclei have magnetic moments, and because of their magnetic moments, some spectroscopy can be done if they are put in magnetic field. In a very similar manner, electrons are also known to have magnetic moments, and when they are kept in a magnetic field, one can do spectroscopy on that. In that sense, they are very similar. In this course, as we learn more of the electron paramagnetic resonance, we will see also the similarities and differences in these two techniques. Now, electron paramagnetic resonance is also known as electron spin resonance or ESR. Both are used in scientific parlance, but do they mean the same, or is one terminology better than the other? These things we will see later. Right now, let us stick to this EPR. This spectroscopy can be used to study host of systems, atoms, molecules, free radicals, radical ions, transition complexes, in all those species which have magnetic moment associated with electron can be studied by this technique. They have wide applications in understanding electron structure, magnetism, phenomena in photochemistry and biology. They have wide range of applications. So, before we start learning about the spectroscopy, it is very interesting to go through the history of developments of some of the key ideas that led to this spectroscopy. To that end, let us start with this person, Peter Zeeman. He was a graduate student, what we call research scholars, of Kamerlingh Onnes in the University of Leiden. Now, Zeeman wanted to study if magnetic field had an influence on the atomic spectral lines. In those days, it was already known that atomic spectra come in the form of discrete lines. So, he wanted to study if magnetic field could show any effect on them. So, as a matter of fact, Michael Faraday did try to investigate this, but he could not see any effect, and Zeeman's initial attempts also did not show any effect, but he was very keen to pursue his investigations. But his professor Kamerlingh Onnes did not want Zeeman to waste his time looking for effect that even Faraday could not see. So, he was discouraging him, but Zeeman was adamant. He wanted to use stronger magnets, magnets which are lying in On's laboratory, but Ons would not give him permission. So, then Ons went to attend a conference. So, that is the opportunity that Zeeman took to use his magnets and looked into the spectral lines of sodium atoms. And what he saw was that the spectral lines of sodium atom just became a little broad, not a great effect, but just a little broad. So, this was the first indication of what was to be famously known as the Zeeman effect. Ons came back after his conference, and Zeeman was very excited to tell him about his observation that here is the sodium lines and they are showing some broadness if they are subjected to this magnetic field. He was very excited about it. But how did Ons reacted to this Zeeman's excitement? Was he happy that Zeeman found something exciting? Did he congratulate him that he saw some effect which even Faraday could not see? Far from it. He was in fact very angry with Zeeman for not listening to him, for wasting his time, probably even using the magnet without his permission. So, he simply threw him out of his laboratory. He fired him. So, that could have brought an end to the scientific career of Zeeman, but fortunately Zeeman found another position in the University of Amsterdam, and there he conclusively showed that spectral lines of sodium vapor actually split into two. Now, this splitting of spectral lines in the presence of an external field is called the Zeeman effect. Now, this effect was now established, and he published it in this journal, famous journal Nature. And the title of the paper was "The Effect of Magnetization on the Nature of Light Emitted by a Substance." And in the paper he concluded by saying, "I return my best thanks to Professor K. Ons for the interest he has shown in my work." I leave it to you to figure out if Zeeman was sending a message to his former supervisor. Anyhow, this work was recognized in the form of a Nobel Prize in 1902 for the research into the influence of magnetism upon radiation phenomena. Kamerlingh Onnes was of course a brilliant scientist in his own right, but he had to wait 11 years before he too could get a Nobel Prize for his investigation of matter at low temperatures and production of liquid helium. This Zeeman effect, that magnetic field could cause splitting, was something very difficult to explain or understand the origin of this. Also, many spectral lines were found to come in pairs when they are seen in high resolution. Here is an example of hydrogen atom spectrum and deuterium. So, each of them show this pair of lines together. The difference in their line position is due to the difference of the nuclear mass. So, that is not of serious consequence. It is that these two doublets here and here, where the separation is very small, of the order of this 0.015 nanometer, that was very difficult to understand. Even sodium atom, for that matter, the bright yellow light that you see in the street lamp, that also has pair of two closely lying line. This very close to each other. So, it is very difficult to explain these doublets. By then Bohr's model of hydrogen atom came. There the two revolutionary ideas were that the atoms have discrete energy levels of this kind, and the absorption or emission of radiation takes place because of transition from this one discrete level to another discrete level. That is the first key proposal of Bohr. So, this discrete nature of energy levels could very easily now explain the discrete spectral lines seen in the spectra, but they are still not sufficient to explain these doublets the way they appear here. This is the sodium atom spectrum, and the one is two shown here for hydrogen and deuterium atom spectrum. They are very difficult to explain. In fact, for sodium atom, the transition involves (3p) to 3s orbital. In Bohr's model, these are degenerate. So, the limitation was obvious that everything is not quite understandable, but Zeeman effect could be explained based on this model, because Bohr had another key ingredient in this model, that is the discrete nature of the angular momentum. Before that, it was assumed that angular momentum can take any arbitrary values, but Bohr said that no, it will take only discrete values. And later, with the Schrodinger formulation of quantum mechanics, this is known to be that the angular momentum value will have this kind of magnitude, let us call it L, magnitude of L square will take this type of values, and the component of that any arbitrary direction will have L z, any particular z direction m L h cross. Here the value of this small l has to have this type of values. Similarly, m l will take minus L to plus L, changing in units of 1. The important point to notice here is these are all integral values. Okay, with this ad hoc requirement that Bohr has imposed, one can explain the Zeeman effect in this way, that motion of charges produces current, and current can produce magnetic field as shown by Faraday. So, for example, if there is a wire and through which current is flowing, it will produce a magnetic field around it, and that can be easily seen by placing a, let us say, the magnetic compass, and depending upon the direction of the current, the needle of the compass can either move this way or that way. Or for that matter, we have a, let us say, a loop of this kind where current is flowing, then it can produce a magnetic field which will have direction either this way or that way. In fact, solenoid is the very common example of producing magnetic field by passing current through a coil. So, in that sense, the orbital motion of the electron can have magnetic moment because of this sort of motion in the atom, and that magnetic moment can be influenced by the magnetic field, which is the Zeeman effect. So, it is possible to explain Zeeman effect in this fashion, but the trouble is that not all such spectral splitting that was seen in the presence of magnetic field cannot be explained by associating the orbital angular momentum and the corresponding magnetic moment. Those things, many of those spectral lines which are seen to be split cannot be explained that way. something was missing. So Pauli, Wolfgang Pauli said that he could explain many of these doublets here, for example, or doublets which are seen, that many of such doublets, not necessarily this particular one or this particular one, many such doublets could be explained if it is assumed that electrons are allowed to take this quantum number n, l and ml in pairs, that is 2 electrons will have same values of this kind, not more than that. So, this sort of double valuedness if it is accepted, then many of these doublet spectral lines can be explained. Of course, now we know that this is nothing but the Pauli exclusion principle, that is what is in mind. So, why it should be so was still not clear, and not only that, that does not explain all the observations of these doublets. Meanwhile, important experiment was carried out by these two people, Otto Stern and Walther Gerlach. What they did was to pass a beam of silver atom through an inhomogeneous magnetic field. In this experiment is done in this way. Let us say this is the magnetic field, the pole pieces are made such a way that the field will be very inhomogeneous, the field lines will look like this, and they have a source of silver atom which is coming here, and they are allowed to fall on a detector, some sort of screen here. Silver atom is known to have this electronic configuration. (4d10 5s1). So, naturally, according to this model, it does not have any angular momentum. So, what is expected that since it has no angular momentum, it will also not have any magnetic moment. So, these atoms are allowed to go through this inhomogeneous magnetic field, they will not experience any particular force. So, what is expected is they will sort of fall here and probably form some sort of lump here. That was the expectation. And let us see what they observed. So, here is an animation which sort of tries to describe this experiment. Here is the source of silver atom, they are collimator, so that we get a sort of narrow beam of silver atoms, and this long thing is the inhomogeneous magnetic field, and this is the screen which detects the silver atom. So, let us see what happens. So, silver atoms are coming from left and going through this magnetic field, and see they are falling apparently randomly on the screen. So, you see that they seem to be piling up in two places. Yeah, now this piling up, it is very obvious that the beams are falling in two places and two piles are formed there. So, it is not what was expected here, that they fall, expected that maybe they will fall only one lump. So, this is again a very extraordinary finding, it cannot be explained by the known electronic structure. So, they sent this finding to Niels Bohr in a postcard, announcing that they found the splitting of this silver beam, particularly because the silver atoms did not have any angular momentum. So, here is the actual photograph. The magnetic field was off, all the atoms fell here, a single lump. When the magnetic field was on, they show splitting. They published their result in this journal, Zeitschrift für Physik, with the title "The Experimental Proof of Directional Quantization." So, this is the famous. Here yet again this is a very difficult experiment that correction. Once again it is very difficult to explain this observation, because this silver atom with this configuration does not have any, supposed to have no magnetic moment, no angular momentum, no magnetic moment, but even then it shows splitting. It means it must have got something to do with the magnetic field that is experienced by this, and this is causing splitting, and it was splitting on 2 lines. So, yet another extraordinary finding without any explanation. Then these 2 persons said that they have a way to explain this splitting of silver atoms. They were 2 young graduate students of they had a very extraordinary and rather novel model of silver atom. Sorry. They come up with a very novel proposal. They said that this Pauli's double occupancy of electrons or the Stern-Gerlach experiment result both could be explained if they make an ad hoc assumption that electrons have another degree of freedom, which is their sort of spinning about its own axis. So, then this, let us say, spinning in this way, clockwise fashion or anti-clockwise fashion, it can give a magnetic moment in this direction or that direction. These 2 types of magnetic moment can interact with the magnetic field here, and it can split into 2. And similarly, it can also explain the double valuedness of Pauli. Important thing is that the angular momentum that the silver atom should have will have the integral values, but half integral values. If I call them, let us say S, this will have value of half ms equal to plus minus half, which is quite different from what has been accepted till then. So, Ehrenfest suggested that they discuss this with Pauli. Now, Pauli was a towering figure in science, and he was a very severe critic of his own work as well as work of others. So, when Uhlenbeck and Gauss-Schmidt went and talked to him about their model, he simply said this is nonsense. He damned their work. It is also true that the calculation of Uhlenbeck Gauss-Schmidt was differing by a factor of 2 from the observation. So, then Ehrenfest sent these 2 young men to discuss with Hendrik Lorentz. Lorentz too dismissed their model of spinning electron. What is the Lorentz complaint? Here it is, that okay, if the charge is rotating, it can produce magnetic field, fine, but let us estimate what type of situation one needs to produce a situation which can explain this deflection. So, this is the spinning model of electron, which is spinning in this fashion. This is electron negative charge is here. Nuclear sizes are exceedingly small, of the order of 10 to the minus 5 meter, what is called 1 Fermi, and electron size is even smaller, about 1000 times smaller than this. So, if the electron's rotation of this kind is actually producing the observed effect, the surface of the electron has to move at 10 times the speed of light. So, clearly this is nonsensical. So, Uhlenbeck and Gauss-Schmidt became very dejected and came back to Ehrenfest, saying that they wanted to withdraw their paper from publication. But Ehrenfest replied that their paper was either very important or nonsense, and he has already sent the manuscript for publication. Then he added that you are both young enough and you have no reputation so far to lose. So, you can permit yourself a folly, that is, if the suggestion of yours turns out to be important, you will become famous, but if it does turn out to be nonsense, then you do not lose anything. So, the paper was published in this journal, Naturwissenschaften, and later calculation using relativistic correction also took care of the factor of 2, which initially they had trouble explaining. So, this suggestion of Uhlenbeck-Gauss-Schmidt did turn out to be very, very important. Now, angular momentum integral kind, angular momentum can also be half integral, that is S equal to half ms equal to plus minus half is also possible here. So, from integral to non-integral, that is a very drastic difference. So, therefore, electrons do have a magnetic moment which is arising because of this motion. So, everything really fell into places, but the Lorentz complaint that electrons are spinning this way, that complaint is still valid. So, what is now accepted, that one must not take this spinning motion very literally, though it is very easy to visualize the motion of the electron. Electrons are not really spinning around the axis. The way earth rotates around its axis to produce day and night, electrons are not doing that kind of motion. One must take it to be an intrinsic property of the electron that has angular momentum of this type of magnitude, and it takes 2 components, and also it has no internal motion to really give us a visual picture of what is happening there. We just take it to be intrinsic property, angular momentum of this kind and the intrinsic magnetic moment. So, these two are intrinsic property. We may not feel very comfortable about just accepting these as intrinsic property, but we do get used to such ideas when you keep using them often. For example, in our daily life, we have really accepted many of these things as an intrinsic property without questioning them. Mass, for example. What is mass? Mass is amount of matter. Okay. What is the matter? That is more difficult. Then answer will be that what the amount of mass that is present. So, you see, we are not making any progress by explaining the concept of mass. Similarly, what is charge? Electron has negative charge, proton has positive charge. What are they? What are these charges? Can we really explain them? We really do not have an explanation, except that we take them to be property of the particles which shows how they interact. That is, positive charge and positive charge, they repel each other. That is the way it is. So, once we know that they have certain properties, and to explain the properties we have to have this concept. In the same way, intrinsic properties of spin angular momentum and magnetic moment can be accepted to say that a host of things are explained, and we get used to using them, intrinsic properties like mass and charge. Anyhow, coming back to now spectroscopy, that Zeeman showed the splitting of energy levels. Now, if the energy levels are split, one can look at the transition among the split lines, and that is nothing but the electron paramagnetic resonance spectroscopy. So, this was first observed by the Russian scientist Zavoisky in 1944 in cupric chloride. Not many people believed his finding, not even Soviet scientists. He published his work in 1945 in a Russian journal. So, it took time before it was noticed by the international scientific community. Nevertheless, this was his PhD work, PhD thesis work, and he got his PhD in 1945. This is the one EPR spectrum that is recorded in chromium chloride. So, this is the way the history of science and particularly relevant to the properties of electron and how it leads to the existence of magnetic moment, which can be influenced by magnetic field, and that can give rise to different energy levels, and that can give rise to spectroscopy, and that is the EPR spectroscopy.